All right, let's get right into it. You know, for as long as we can remember, we've been taught that the world is solid. It's predictable. It's made of, well, matter. But what if I told you there's a hidden history? A story about a group of scientists and deep thinkers who all claimed that reality is nothing like what it seems, and that maybe, just maybe, the real nature of the universe has been kept from us on purpose.
And that brings us to this question, posed by a Japanese scientist named Dr. Michiyushi Kushi. Just think about that for a second. What if matter itself does not exist? It's a huge thought, one that pretty much challenges everything we believe about the world around us, and even our own bodies.
And look, this wasn't just some abstract idea he was kicking around with friends. Back in 1999, Dr. Kushi supposedly went right to the top. He presented this very idea to the United States Congress. And what happened next? According to our source? Crickets. The press completely ignored it, his testimony was buried, and the documents, they just vanished. Right away, the story starts with a real mystery. So what was this supposedly dangerous idea? What was so threatening about it? Let's unpack the core philosophy of Dr. Kushi. He wasn't just talking about physics. He was proposing a totally different way of seeing everything: health, sickness, and even our own human potential.
Okay, so check this out. This slide really lays out the two completely different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you've got the mainstream view we all grew up with. The physical world is what's real. Your body is a solid object, and when you get sick, it's because of a chemical imbalance or a mistake in your DNA. But Kushi's view, it flips that whole script. He said energy is what's primary, and all this physical stuff, matter, is just its shadow. Your body isn't solid at all. It's more like a field of energy, constantly blinking in and out of existence. And sickness? That's just your energy getting blocked or jumbled up.
Now, Kushi wasn't just pulling these ideas out of thin air. What he was doing was connecting the dots between modern physics and really ancient Eastern philosophy. For thousands of years, these traditions have talked about a fundamental life force that flows through absolutely everything. They call it ki in Japan, chi in China, prana in India. Different names, sure, but they're all pointing to the exact same core concept.
And this is how that philosophy gets put into practice. If you get sick, it's not a DNA error, it's chaotic ki. So the goal isn't just to mask a symptom with a pill, it's to get that energy flowing smoothly again. Things like acupuncture needles aren't just poking you, they're seen as tiny antennas being placed along these energy highways, or meridians, to unblock, add, or even reduce ki. And get this, even the food you eat is seen as a kind of code that literally programs your body's energy.
But here's the thing, Kushi wasn't alone wolf in this, not by a long shot. He was actually part of this long and pretty controversial line of researchers. You could call them frequency healers. And they all believed that vibration and energy were the real keys to understanding life and disease.
Yeah, this pattern goes way back to the early 20th century. First, you had Albert Abrams, who developed this thing called radionics, a system he said could diagnose any illness just by its energy rate. Then, a little later, you have Royal Raymond Rife, a brilliant guy who built these incredibly powerful microscopes and frequency generators that he believed could literally shatter viruses and bacteria. And then there's Ruth Drown, who took radionics even further, claiming she could broadcast healing frequencies to a person anywhere in the world using just a drop of their blood. So the crucial thing to get here is that they weren't all doing the exact same thing. Rife's idea was very direct. You find the exact resonant frequency of a microbe. He called it the mortal oscillatory rate, and you blast it with that frequency until it shatters. You know, like an opera singer breaking a wine glass with their voice. But what Abrams and Drown were doing with radionics was a bit more out there. It was all about tuning into a disease's unique energy signature and then broadcasting a corrective frequency, sometimes over hundreds of miles. Now, this whole idea, this thread of mind and energy shaping the physical world, it didn't just die out in the 1950s. It actually found a new and really visually stunning life in the work of a more recent researcher, Masaru Emoto, and his famous experiments with water. Emoto's central claim was both incredibly simple and absolutely mind-blowing, that our thoughts, our words, even the music we listen to, could physically change the structure of water. The basic idea is that water acts like a kind of liquid memory, and it can record the vibrations of the energy we direct at it. And his process was pretty straightforward. He'd take water samples and then expose them to all kinds of different things. He'd tape words like love or hate to the bottles, he'd play classical music or heavy metal, or he'd have people pray over them. Then he'd freeze tiny droplets from each sample and take pictures of the ice crystals that formed. And the results he published were just wild. The water that was exposed to positive words and beautiful music supposedly formed these gorgeous symmetrical crystals like snowflakes. But the water exposed to negative words, it formed these ugly, distorted, chaotic blobs. Now, as fascinating and honestly as cool as all of these claims are, from Kushi's energy fields to Rife's frequency machines and Emoto's water crystals, they all live inside this massive storm of scientific controversy. Which, of course, brings us to the search for proof. And this is the million-dollar question we have to ask, right? Are these revolutionary truths that have been deliberately suppressed, or are they just interesting ideas that, well, don't really hold up when you put them under a microscope, scientifically speaking? Well, from the perspective of mainstream science, the answer is pretty clear. None of these claims have been validated in controlled, peer-reviewed studies. Critics say the results often can't be reproduced, which is, a huge deal in the scientific method. Emoto's work especially gets criticized for not having proper controls and for basically cherry-picking the photos that fit his theory. And those devices, like the Rife machine, they are absolutely not approved by agencies like the FDA for treating diseases. The scientific consensus is that all of these ideas fall squarely into the category of pseudoscience. And yet, despite all of that, despite the scientific consensus, the core idea behind all of these controversial figures just keeps on going. It continues to inspire people all over the world. So, what is this powerful, unifying idea that just won't die? What it all boils down to, the one thing that connects Kushi and Rice and Emoto and even the ancient mystics is this: everything is vibration. Matter isn't the solid, dead thing we think it is. It's all just energy. And if that's true, then reality isn't fixed. It can be influenced, it can be shaped, and it can maybe even be rewritten. Not by some outside force, but from within, through our own consciousness, our intention, and our energy. And if we circle all the way back to Dr. Kushi, the narrative gives us a potential reason why this knowledge might have been pushed into the shadows. The source material claims that he believed that if people truly understood their own power to influence reality through energy, well, the entire system, which kind of relies on us feeling small and powerless, would just collapse. And so that's what we're left with, this final provocative question straight from the source material. It presents us with two completely different worlds. In one, we're just passive observers living in a random material world. In the other, we're active participants in a vibrational reality we can help create. The choice, it suggests, is ours.